Wherever the moon lies in your chart, we're talking about your key to happiness, your emotional needs. Revealing the moon is the essence of intimacy. For a Gemini person, to reveal the moon is to express oneself, to communicate. Here's what my heart feels. And to complete the circuit of feeling intimate, if you have a Gemini moon, the other person needs to respond. If I have a Gemini moon and I say, so how was your day? And they say, bad, and I say, what happened? And they say, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, you have a right not to talk about it. But I, the Gemini moon person, feel rejected. I want to hear. It's not only about talking. An example from a John Lennon song, which perhaps is less known, starts with this line: half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it just to reach you, Julia. We think of trivial conversation about the weather, so to speak. And it's so easy to interpret that as shallow or a waste of time. Like we should all sit there in silence, if we have nothing to say. But something that a Gemini moon understands is that speech and conversation are a ritual. I'm sure that if there were a psychic who was very attuned to visual stimulus, maybe picking up the tendrils of the auric energy, around someone, and that psychic watched two people in conversation, even if the conversation were utterly empty and seemingly meaningless, we would see the tendrils of energy of the two people coming together, coming into interaction with one another, as my energy body feels your energy body through the ritual of communication. And half of what I say might be meaningless, but I say it to reach out to you. The mood of the life is connective and curious. Now I've rolled out that word communication, and obviously that word is tied to language. So Gemini moon, your destiny is tied to language. But wherever you are, listening to this recording, subliminally, you're aware. Remember that alertness of what's to the right and what's to the left of the whole environment. The environment is speaking to you. If you were to say, the astrologer says rooms communicate with me, people would look at you kind of strangely. So maybe instead of saying the room communicates with you, you could say you are perceiving the room. And that communication is a subset of this larger Geminian framework of perception. So you have a Gemini moon. To be happy, you need fresh perception. Again, we're right back to that word curiosity. If there were a cardinal sin, so to speak, which is to say a betrayal of one's own intrinsic nature, for a Gemini moon, it's to be willingly bored. Now, if you're bored waiting for a red light to turn green, that's not a cardinal sin. If you've chosen safety and predictability over the basic adventure of life, then you've made a terrible mistake with the Gemini moon. You've kind of missed the point of it. There's a criticism leveled at Gemini moon in particular sometimes, that it's really distracted. It doesn't stick to its plan. It doesn't follow through or finish with things. But if we're carrying a lot of Gemini quality, I also want to be careful not to quickly judge it. That, okay, I'm finished with this. I've learned what I need to learn from it. It may not look finished to other people, but to me it's finished, and life is way too short to waste any time here. A person with the Gemini moon is behaving in a perfectly fine way as far as their evolutionary needs go and the maintenance of their own happiness. And they still might be judged by the world. At the evolutionary level, the purpose of the Gemini moon, what the soul is learning, above all, is simply the idea of an open mind. That whatever I see, it's more than that. Now, in an evolutionary sense, what might lead a person to be born with a Gemini moon? We can imagine a prior life condition in which the person was dogmatic or placed in a social context of a dogmatic understanding of the world. A dogmatic religion, of course, comes to mind, but there's other forms of dogma. And there's a simple need to stretch and allow life to be full of wonder and amazement. Now, that sounds good, right? A sense of the miraculous. Try this. God marched you to the end of the diving board and said, I want you to go down there and become utterly and totally confused. But wait a minute, that doesn't sound as good. But there's no such thing as a miracle that doesn't confuse us, because if we understand it, it's not a miracle. Everyone loves miracles in principle, and nobody much likes confusion in principle. And the harder we look at them, the more they converge. And so to embrace confusion, and again, the mantra here with the Gemini moon that leads you to happiness and a sense of fulfillment and a purpose for life is whatever I see, whatever I understand, it's more than that. My understanding is not yet complete. I'm open to have the rug pulled out from underneath me as far as my understanding goes. Okay, so let me know what you thought of that. If you have a Gemini moon, or if you know someone else who has that, I will see you later in the next series of the moon